Hey there! Did you know Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices? And when you download the Kroger app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Kroger today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Hello and welcome to Want to Hear Something Weird, a weekly weird podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tom.
I'm Laura.
Laura, why are you laughing at the way I introduced the show?
I'm not laughing at you, but I whispered into the mic. And then you immediately went into it.
Yeah.
So it may or may not be the first thing that people hear this week.
Okay, just a
voice going.
A very quiet. So if people hear that at home, your house isn't haunted. It's just a very quiet Laura Anderson whispering that she's ready to start recording the show.
I wasn't ready for you to be so on it when I.
That's me. I flip the switch on the recorder.
He turns it on. Tom turns it on, and he's podcast Tom.
As soon as these things are over, I collapse into a heap.
Oh, don't I know it? Tom,
mm-hmm.
Want to hear something?
Yeah,
weird?
I want to hear something weird. It's the whole reason why I did this show with you.
This week, we're going back.
Okay. To when?
Back in time to October of 1957.
Okay. I mean, sometimes when we go back in time here, it's like millions of years, so.
Just you wait.
Oh, whoa. I see.
We might even be going further back.
All right. It's not a
Buckle up.
It's not a one-way trip.
That's right. So we are in rural England in October of 1957 in the village of Cursey, which is in Suffolk.
Okay.
Very picturesque, rural English countryside village.
Okay. A lot of rolling moors.
Perhaps.
Yeah, sure.
Don't hold me to it. But it's definitely described as being a very quaint English, lovely village.
A lovely little village in the 50s.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 3 15-year-old boys who had all recently signed up to be cadets, Royal Navy cadets. So they are, as part of their training, are on this exercise, this map reading exercise where they have, they're given a compass and a map and
told to find their way home or whatever.
Told to navigate their way. I think it's about 4 or 5 miles of the countryside to a designated point, and then they return to the base and report back what they had seen. There's the 3 boys are William, who is the leader of the group. Okay. Michael and Ray.
That actually kind of sounds like fun.
It does sound fun.
Yeah.
But not for long.
Yeah, I was gonna. I imagine that the story was that they just had like a fun, wholesome time out there together,
and that's the story. Nothing weird about it. I just telling you this nice story.
They came back and they told their sergeant or whatever, "Oh, we didn't really see anything except for beautiful English countryside.
It was just lovely and quaint." So they're on this exercise. It's about 3 or 4 miles, so it's kind of taking up a big chunk of the day.
Yeah.
And they approach a village called Cursey.
Okay.
Where they hear church bells ringing. And they think, hey, this would be a lovely place to stop and have a break and eat some food or whatever they brought with them. Once they entered the village, the church bells stopped and it was complete silence.
Always a bad sign.
And there are some other interesting signs that only increase with creepiness as we go. So there suddenly are really no signs of modernity to be seen. Okay. So no cars parked along the road.
I thought you said maternity at first.
Modernity.
It's like no moms? No moms anywhere?
Well, it doesn't sound like there were moms involved.
No signs of modernity. But keep in mind, it was in the 50s.
So
it wasn't very modern.
It wasn't very modern. You're right. I take it back.
You're saying that there were no
There was no Wi-Fi.
Yeah, nobody had any smartphones. It was very odd. No, you're saying that there were no signs of 50s era modernity.
Yes.
So like no cars or anything like that, I would guess.
No cars, no antennas on roofs.
Okay, I believe they call them aerials over there.
They did.
Yeah.
I translated it.
And I translated it back just in case any English people are listening.
I hope that they
appreciate that.
Yeah. Appreciate you translating it back.
Yeah.
There were no phone wires strung along the street, no telephone poles.
Poles and wires.
And they didn't see the church that they had heard.
Wow.
It's not, it's a small village, so you would be able to see, everything by standing on the main street.
Churches aren't a modern thing. They were around for a long time, even before the 50s.
It's true. So the season had also seemed to change as the cadets entered the village. They described it as verdant, and the trees were that magnificent green color one finds in spring or early summer. Now, remember, we're there in October.
Oh, okay.
So that doesn't really add up.
I was about to ask when they were because I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's
in October,
why I restated it, because I knew you had forgotten.
Either dying or dead already, usually.
Right. And the houses on the high street or the main street, I've translated it.
Thank you. For anybody
American listeners.
in England, that means the high street.
All the houses looked old, handmade of timber and thatched roofs, quote, almost medieval in appearance, one boy thought. Mm-hmm. So up to this point, are you thinking, oh, this is just, it's a quaint village, it's a small village, it just hasn't really been touched by
No, it's a time slip. They accidentally slipped through time.
Well, I was thinking as I was beginning the research, I was like, yeah, I've visited some very old villages before, and I feel like I go back in time. I think that there are some places that they've managed to maintain
there are still, but not in England, I don't think. Not unless it's like literally a preserved,
right?
Look,
they're working to keep it preserved.
We had where I grew up on Long Island. There's a town called Bethpage, and there's a place called Old Bethpage.
It's old.
Yeah, and that's roofs. Like where you go on field trips, and some out of work actor is like, I churn the butter here.
Old to Long Island versus old to rural England is a different kind of old, though.
Yeah, this was like 1800s. Yeah. It wasn't that crazy far removed. Like all the buildings were still the same buildings, I believe. They were still standing and whatnot.
Still pretty cool, in my opinion. I like old stuff.
Old Bethpage?
Yeah.
It was pretty lame, I remember.
Okay. Well, back
maybe
in Cursey.
Maybe they've updated it. Now it's new Bethpage.
Wow.
A glimpse into the future.
Oh, time slip forward.
Yeah.
So the boys are thinking this is medieval looking, and they walk up to the window of one of the buildings nearby. I'm going to read a quote from one of the boys.
Okay.
So they're looking in the window. There were no tables or counters, just 2 or 3 whole oxen carcasses.
Oh, okay. Back in the days.
Not living oxen.
Right. Back in the days before tables and chairs were invented, people just sat on oxen.
The oxen had been skinned in places and were quite green with age.
Ew.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
There was also a green painted door and windows that had smallish glass panes, one at the front and one at the side, and they were rather dirty looking. I remember that as we 3 looked through the window in disbelief at the green and moldy green carcasses, the general feeling certainly was one of disbelief and unreality. Who would believe that in 1957 that the health authorities would allow such conditions?
Yeah, and if somebody were in the middle of butchering an oxen, why'd they stop?
Right.
And I imagine even through that, especially if it's, some like medieval glass or whatever, stink. That smell would be coming outside.
Maybe it was so moldy that it wasn't.
That it didn't stink anymore?
Past that, yeah.
Maybe.
It was
bizarre, regardless.
Bizarre. Some would say weird. They looked into another building They said it was a house that also was deserted. There was no furniture inside, and they described the rooms as, quote, not of modern day quality.
Right.
At this point, they're freaked out, they're feeling eerie, and they decide, hey, let's head out of the village. Let's get moving back to the base.
Let's go back to what we were doing, following this map to a place and going back.
Yeah. They climb a hill outside of the village, and they turn around once they reach the top and look back at the village, and suddenly we hear the bells once more and see the smoke rising from chimneys. They said that none of the chimneys were smoking when they were in the village. It was only after they had left and looked back at the village that they saw the smoke and the church bells ringing again. And they said they decided to run for a few hundred yards to kind of shake off the weird feeling that they had.
Yeah, they were scared. They ran away.
They were spooked.
Yeah.
They said it was a ghost village. Excuse me. They said it was a ghost village. It was almost as if we had, quote, walked back in time. I experienced an overwhelming feeling of sadness and depression in Cursey, but also a feeling of unfriendliness and unseen watchers, which sent shivers up one's back. I wondered if we'd knocked at a door to ask a question, who might have answered it. It doesn't bear thinking about.
Yeah, it might have been the devil himself.
Maybe they slipped into a different dimension.
Right, or some, like a time cops or something, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Some kind of time thing going on where they removed all the people. Because it's weird that it's weird that it's back in time, but that it's also empty. Because we've talked about time slip stuff before.
Well, I have an explanation for that.
Oh, okay.
So
but
stay tuned.
All right, then I'll stop on that thread.
When they returned to base, they told their superiors about what happened, and their superiors just laughed it off.
Really well.
Yeah, they didn't really.
Oh, sir, we went back in time by accident.
Yeah, exactly what happened. I think it's almost like you were there.
Yeah.
And so nothing really ever came of that at that point. They carried on living their lives. So now we're going to jump forward in time.
Whoa, okay.
To 1980s.
Great. That's when I was around.
Hey, I was too.
Not for all of it, but for most of it.
I was there for some of it. A very small part of it. So, 1980s, Michael and William, the two of the boys.
Michael Jackson's at the top of the charts.
Michael Jackson
painting a picture.
Michael Jackson's at the top of the charts. What else is happening?
Okay, so there's two of the boys.
Two of the boys are living in Australia, and they reconnect, old friends, and are still troubled by the events that happened in 1957 when they were cadets, especially William.
Yeah.
So William and Michael were talking about it. They rehashed, the eerie silence, the very lack of any sort of antennas or
just kind of compared notes.
Yeah, no phone wires, the green meat at the butcher shop. And both of them have very vivid memories of this. So William decides to write a letter to an author of a book he had just read. The author is Andrew Mackenzie. And Andrew Mackenzie is a pretty high-ranking member of the Society for Psychical Research. So in the United Kingdom, the Society for Psychical Research describes itself as the first society to conduct organized scholarly research into human experiences that challenge contemporary scientific models. So they try to understand any sort of psychic or paranormal events and abilities.
Yeah, unexplained phenomena.
Indeed.
They investigate.
Just a fun fact.
Just like us.
Well, just like us, yeah. And in fact, Arthur Conan Doyle was once a member of this society. His name pops up quite a bit. I'm learning as we do this podcast. He just seems to get himself into these.
Town.
He's a busy man.
Yeah.
So William writes to Andrew Mackenzie, and Andrew Mackenzie reads the letter from William and recognized it as a possible case of retrocognition, which is what they called it, which is a term for an extrasensory knowledge of past events.
Okay.
AKA a time slip.
Right.
Andrew and William basically become pen pals for almost 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Before finally William flies back to England so that Andrew and William can visit Cursey and walk through the experience again.
Right. See what it's like in the 80s.
Right. Michael stays in Australia. He's not on this trip.
It's a long trip.
It is a long trip. And Andrew Mackenzie, after, walking through with William, concludes that it was a genuine experience that the boys had. And these are some of the facts that impressed him the most.
Okay. Quick question before
frankly,
you get to
they
that.
impressed me too.
William Mackenzie, Andrew Mackenzie.
Andrew Mackenzie.
Any relation to Spuds Mackenzie, the original party animal?
I have no idea who that is.
You can tell that you didn't spend a lot of time in the 80s.
I told you, just the tail end of it.
No idea who that is.
Well,
unbelievable. Continue.
Sometimes Tom is deeply upset that I'm not Tim. I think.
Because otherwise this would just be a half hour about Spuds Mackenzie.
Well, now you have to tell me who it is.
You probably do remember it was the dog that was the Budweiser spokesperson.
No.
The dog with the black spot on his eye.
I'll Google him later.
It was Spuds. It was actually a girl. Should this just be an episode about Spuds Mackenzie?
Sure.
When you want to hear something weird, Spuds Mackenzie was actually a female dog. When it was implied that he was a male dog because he was always surrounded by bikini babes.
Classic patriarchy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was 80s Budweiser commercials. So they were like, we want to make sure this dog's seen as sexy, but still cute enough to appeal to children as well. Want to know one of my favorite sounds? Here it is. That's the sound I hear when I'm learning a new language with Babbel. And if you want to learn a new language this year, I guarantee it'll be one of your favorite sounds too. You can become a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching, so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. One of my favorite things about Babbel, everybody's addicted to their phones nowadays, but when you're doing, your exercises on Babbel, you feel like you're actually learning something. You're not just endlessly scrolling through a feed or whatever. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Here's a special deal for our listeners. Right now, you can get 55% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/weird. Get 55% off at babbel.com/weird, spelled BABBEL.com/weird. You know how to spell weird. Rules and restrictions may apply. Anyway, you were saying
we're going to get some comments. Laura doesn't know who Spuds Mackenzie is.
The 5 things that impressed.
No, I didn't say 5. These are just the things, a list of things. The things that are impressive about the case. So the house that...
And this is Andrew also physically went to the place. Guernsey, is it? Right? Cursey. The
house that William was one of the boys, William and Andrew visited. Just to reiterate, the house that he identified as the butcher shop was a private residence in 1957.
Okay.
And it remained one until it was, until
bulldozed
until the 90s, I think.
Okay.
So it was one, when they revisited Cursey. However, the house dated back to about 1350.
That's an old house.
And had actually been a butcher shop until about 1790.
Wow. So it's been a few hundred years as a butcher shop.
So it was a butcher shop from the time that it was built until about,
Wow.
Until about
so that
1790.
place was full of
and then it was
ghosts.
And then it was a residence.
Yeah.
So when the boys actually were in that village, it was a private residence, not a butcher shop.
Okay.
The fact that they even knew it was a butcher shop,
what are the odds
lends itself
of that?
to something happened, something's up.
Mm-hmm.
The church was St. Mary's in Cursey, and it still stands today and dates back to the 14th century and is a big landmark in the village, which would be able to, visible from anywhere on the main street.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Mackenzie also said that the date he did research after the visit, but he pinpoints that the date the boys probably traveled back to was sometime shortly after the Black Death, which was in 1349 to 1348 to 1349.
Okay.
So a couple of years there. And at that time, the building of the church had to be halted because of the plague, and it was likely covered by trees at that time, so wasn't fully erected.
Why they didn't see it.
And that explains why they didn't see it. And about half the population of the village had died in the plague.
Yeesh.
So that's why it was also very quiet in the village.
And probably everybody else was either in the process of dying
or
and
grieving
survived,
or
struggling, or just hiding.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine. So Andrew Mackenzie's conclusion was that it was a plausible event, a genuine experience that the boys had. Now, of course, there's some criticism, as there always will be. So the village was not hooked up to the main lines until about the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's records of this because there were protests from the Preservation Society, which did not want, the phone lines set up anyway.
Okay.
So it's possible that they maybe weren't set up at that point when the boys visited. There's also this thing called derealization, which is a psychological condition in which the real world seems unreal. So things like, the very eerie, quiet feeling that the boys had when they were there could have been.
But the odds of three of them experiencing derealization at the same time?
Yeah.
Without any external cause to point to? Yeah, that's suspicious.
Now, well, here's the last piece.
Okay.
Remember that third cadet, Ray?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't really remember.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
they reached out.
Exist.
I think, reached out to him, but he was like, I don't really recall the experience.
Interesting.
So is it possible that maybe William, as the leader, kind of influenced the other boy?
Well, I was going to say that it is interesting in cases, because I feel like you hear about this a lot, especially paranormal experiences that happen to people when they're children. Them getting together later with people, very understandably, to kind of be like, am I remembering this right? Like, do you remember this? Like, this is now a memory that's like 30 years away. I kind of feel like a crazy person. Did I make this up?
Yeah.
But it also, as you were saying, invites the possibility of, two people unintentionally kind of coming up with a story or collaborating a story. Somebody says, oh, I remember seeing the green meat. I don't remember that. But then later they do remember it because somebody else told them that, and they aren't lying. They genuinely think that. Memories are odd things.
Yes. I have a memory
from
when I was a kid. I was at a birthday party.
Okay.
Don't remember whose birthday party, but there was a magician there. And the magician dropped a huge coin onto my foot, and it disappeared into my foot.
Uh-huh.
Didn't hurt or anything, but I just have a very vivid memory of a coin dropping onto my foot and then disappearing, like went into my foot. And he never got it back on. I still think I have a coin in my foot.
Wow. Like how big we talking?
We're talking about like $50.
Okay. But not like comically oversized.
No.
Right. I mean, I remember seeing a magician at the library when I was a kid. And like to this day, in my mind, it was like the best magician I've ever seen.
Of course.
Because I did not even have any idea what to look for. So I wasn't looking for anything. So it's like, wow, he made that person hover in the air. I can't believe it.
Wow.
But there's no other explanation for it.
Wow. But my point is, if I were to ask anybody else if they remembered that,
they
wouldn't.
Yeah.
They wouldn't.
They'd be like that.
I don't.
Yeah, I remember it hit your foot and bounced under a table, and you didn't see that.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. What do you think causes time slips? It is interesting, the idea of it being an extrasensory type thing, of it something kind of happening in a person's mind, not them necessarily physically traveling back in time, but their senses somehow taking in something from a long time ago rather than something in present day in their present surroundings.
Right. Well, so we covered on the Complete Guide Patreon.
Yeah.
Where do you go to subscribe to that?
Patreon.com/complete guide.
Oh, good to know. The Moberly Jourdan incident, which was at Versailles, where they believe that they went back in time, saw Marie Antoinette. It makes me wonder, they're in these locations that have a very strong history.
Yeah.
That could potentially be part of it.
I mean, yeah, you could argue with this that it was, the psychic energy of all these people dying from the Black Death that had some weird anomalous effect on this physical location.
Maybe.
That's what I would argue.
I think that's a pretty good argument.
We have some listener email. Should we do this now?
I think we should.
Okay. Here it is.
Hi, Tom and Laura. This is Dana Brady from upstate New York, and I wanted to tell you about a story that a good friend of mine told me that happened to her about 15 years ago when she was a teenager. In upstate New York, there's a cemetery called Oakwood Cemetery that is very old. It's in Troy, New York. It's known for being very spooky and haunted, seemingly. So one day, I think it was like 2008 or 2007, she had gone with a group of friends and her boyfriend to just kind of poke around. They were just being teenagers. This was during the day, and they kind of split off from one another. And my friend didn't really see anything. It was kind of a dreary day, and the other friends didn't see anything, but her boyfriend came back and said, I saw something so weird. It was this white dog, and it was on its hind legs, and it was kind of walking around sort of stilted and weird like a person. And they were like, well, that's really weird. And, they talked about it a little bit more. And then the next day, my friend was on the computer, and she's like, oh my gosh, like, I guess a lot of people see this thing, this white dog thing. And she was telling her boyfriend this, and her boyfriend looked at her very blankly and was like, I don't know what you're talking about. What white dog thing? And she was like, the thing you saw yesterday. And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't see anything. And they got in an argument over it, and then they just never talked about it again. So I don't remember if at the time I had looked it up or tried to find anything, but I'm curious if you two know anything about this. Would love to hear your thoughts. I think you guys are great. Keep going with the show, and thanks.
Wow.
You got two things there. First, you got somebody seeing the white dog man. And then you got somebody saying, I didn't say I saw that white dog man.
This, Dana, thank you for sending this in.
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about. This is the type of thing that I love hearing.
And so then it makes you wonder, either mind erase, or was that a skinwalker pretending to be her boyfriend?
Wow.
That was like, I just saw a white dog walking around. It's like, Charlie, you're always saying weird stuff. It's like, I guess I'll just go back to the woods. And then her real boyfriend came out or whatever.
What if there's a cryptid that lives in upstate? Troy, I think, is the area where Oakwood Cemetery is. Okay. Maybe there's a new cryptid of a white dog standing on hind legs.
I mean, I've heard about people seeing dogmen, and I think even like white dogmen, like white colored dogmen, that's a thing. Yeah, that's a weird one, all right.
Especially, yeah, I mean, the double twist.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Also, like, if I saw something like that, if we were, I mean, we're weird, but if we were at
what have I told you about?
I'm weird. You're normal. If we were at a cemetery together and I saw a white dog walking around on two legs, very stilted, I'd go find you and go, you got to come see this dog.
Yeah, you would. And we'd probably have a weird psychological breakdown together.
I wonder if it was walking stilted like a dog walks on two legs, and that's why they thought it was a dog in the first place? Or
what if it was just a dog that can do tricks?
Could have been a dog, but that doesn't explain why he later claimed to have not seen it.
Her boyfriend had a twin that he never met before.
That they had never met before. Yeah, but that must have felt like gaslighting when.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when I'm sure she was like, the whole reason I'm looking this stuff up is because you told me you saw this.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How eerie. That would really freak me out if I had a crazy experience. Or no, if you had a crazy experience, you came to me and said, Laura, this crazy thing happened. The next day, I'm like looking up how this happened. And you said, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. That would really mess with me.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dana. If you have a story you'd like to tell us on the podcast, you can either record it as a voicemail, which is what Dana did, I believe, and email it to us, wannahearpod@gmail.com. Or if that sounds like too much trouble, you can go to speakpipe.com/wannahearpod. And there's just a button there, and you can record a voicemail, and it automatically gets sent to us.
You can also just email us your weird stories, and we can read it for you. Whatever is easiest for you.
Yeah.
We want to hear weird stories. We're weirdos.
What'd you say?
I said we want to hear weird stories. We're weird.
Oh, okay. You were doing weird stuff. You were like shivering while you were saying it. You can follow us on social media. We're at Wanna Hear Pod on most social medias. And
thanks for listening.
We'll see you next week.
Want to Hear Something Weird is a Clamor audio production, distributed by the Cloud 10 Network. Hosted and executive produced by Tom Reynolds and me, Laura Anderson. Executive produced by Aaron Hilliard.
Clamor General Manager Rich Statter. Associate Producer Ethan Aronson. Post-production supervised by Devin Ruskin. Production Assistant Samara Mullick. Special thanks to Sim Sarna and Saiba Krieger at Cloud 10.
Seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring 20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device, or play on PC through Facebook Games.